Our dough has risen, and you can see that it is puffier and lighter than it was before. You generally can tell as if you stick 2 fingers in there and the hole stays that it's ready, you know, and that's a good thing. So we take it out of here. People have an idea that you have to really beat up the dough to punch it down. Well, you don't punch it at all, actually. It's a living thing. You wouldn't beat up your best friend, would you? So there you are. Pat it out on a floured surface. We're going to start preparing the loaves now. Okay. This handy little tool is called a bench knife. A lot of people don't know about bench knives, but they really come in handy in a lot of ways. And one of the ways that they can come in handy is they can cut things. Okay. So I'm cutting my dough in half so that you can see that we can make visitors' loaves and communion loaves. When you make the communion loaves, they're going to be a fairly good size. Okay. You have a cookie sheet? Okay.
I'm going to put some baker's joy on there and spray it. Did you hand me the baker's thing? I'll get you. Thank you.
Okay. Now to shape the round loaves, okay, I like to think of it as something that I used to do when I was a kid. You would get a circle of fabric and you would gather it to the underneath, pulling the threads to gather it to the underneath, so that by the time you were done gathering it, you had this little ball of fabric and threads underneath, and the top was nice and smooth. And that's kind of how you do it to make the communion bread loaves, too. It's a good idea when you're doing that to give the dough a good squeeze before you're doing that, because you're going to get some air bubbles when you gather that up, and you don't want those air bubbles to pop up. Okay. So when it's about this size, place it on your cookie sheet. It's going to rise again. And repeat for another loaf. This is a single recipe, and as I mentioned earlier, you would be making a double recipe for church, so you would need to make 4 communion loaves for a normal Sunday. Okay, here's our circle. Turn it over, and I'm going to gather it up on the underneath side. Okay, and there's our little ball. It has a little air pocket right there, so okay, you can pick it so it doesn't pop if it pops. If it doesn't, just take a needle and poke the center of it, and it'll release the air, and you're all set to go. Okay. Now these will take about less time than it took for the first rising to cook. Now we need a visitor's loaf pan.
Right here, it's all
Okay, there we
greased
go.
up for you. Ready to go.
Usually a single recipe will make 4 visitors' loaves, depending on how much flour you're using. So I'll plan for 4 here. Okay. And move this a little bit out of the way. In this case, when you're making the visitors' loaves, you try to get sort of a rectangle shape. Okay. Needs a little flour under there. A little rectangle shape. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. And you fold it end and press, the other end over and press. Big air bubble there. Okay, now you've got sort of a folded over thing, okay? And that's not going to make a pretty visitor's loaf. So what you do is, you can do one of 2 things. If it's too long, you fold it over like this. If it's not too long, Okay, you can just do this again and make it, pinch it together. Now this really was a little bit on the long side. Here comes your trusty bench knife in action again. Cut it off. Okay. And there you are. Slip it into the slot in the loaf pan. And repeat. You'll have 4 of them. I'm going to repeat this one more time. We don't have to watch all of the 4 being made. Okay, you make a rectangle. End. Okay, this one looks a lot shorter. This will really work out better. Okay, roll it together to hide the seam. Pinch it. Okay, and if you have an ugly end like that, you might want to pinch that too. And pop it in your pan. Okay, there you go. We can stop there.